And we will provide audio links to anybody who doesn't get to make it to class for any reason. And sometimes we'll even be able to set up Zoom links if we're doing Zoom. So Andrew is going out on a limb for us. So they've said no more than 175 people in a gathering, and he has had more than that. However, he said, I am going to comply with every single recommendation that the state makes. Now, they are recommendations, they are not laws, but he's complying, and he said, I have a mask, I am going to wear my mask as an example. So that's something. And I have a mask. When you're seated at your desk or when we're teaching, you're not required to have a mask. When you go through the buildings, as you enter the buildings, as you exit, we are required to have our masks on. Now, people do actually get sick from COVID. You probably all know that. There is some benefit to the mask in perhaps reducing the spread. Whether that's true or not, I mean, there's some disadvantages too. You're rebreathing, the carbon dioxide. But nevertheless, Andrew is saying we're going to abide by every recommendation, and so we're actually protecting Andrew. If we fail to do that, they can come back at him and say, well, we made these recommendations, you didn't follow them, therefore, you're subject to penalties. So that's one reason. Another reason is to prevent the whole school from having to close if someone gets sick. So if we're divided up into zones, now we are part of what's called the blue zone. You know the colors of the lanyards. Blue is first year. So because first year is on the main floor and we're on the main floor, they've just put us into that first year zone. However, within the first year zone, there are many students, so they divide it up into teams. So we're not really part of first year, but we're in the building they're in, on the floor they're in. We actually are limited to stay on this floor. And what's more, we are limited to what areas of this floor we can go in. So that entrance that you came through, the double doors from the parking garage, is our designated only entrance and exit. So you can't go walking through the building and go out another, because then we've taken someone who potentially, let's say, could have the COVID or some disease, and they cross through a group of people that are now exposed to that. So do you understand the logic? They're just trying to protect people. Yes? People?
What's our designated restroom facility?
And I have a whole PowerPoint that I'll show it to you,
okay.
But as you came in, if you would continue to the end of the hall, turn right, at the far end of that hall is where that bathroom is. You might have previously used the little bathrooms across from the mailboxes. That's not ours. That's assigned to another team. So ours is just that one there, and then the cafe, I'll show you on a PowerPoint. If you went to the end of the hall that you entered, turned left, go through 2 sets of double doors, and then you walk down a long, narrow hallway that's adjacent to the auditorium, and you come out by the front registration desk, and then you turn right, and there's a cafe there. That's our cafe. But to simplify, there's a microwave, there's a Keurig. You don't have to really go anywhere. You can bring food, you can warm it up. They just ask that our eating is done during the breaks and not during class time. So they're really, we could not eat in the classroom last year, technically. I'd say those rules were broken at times. So one more reason, we're conforming to the recommendations so Andrew can say, look, we have done everything you suggested, so you can't put blame on us if anything goes wrong. So, if you drive to school, how many of you drive to school? I'm betting there's going to be most hands. How many of you would need to walk to school because you live somewhere adjacent? Anyone? Great, because that's a whole other process. So if you drive to school, today they checked you at the gate. But with the number of people coming in, that would be so time consuming. So, do you remember in last year at times, I don't remember the sequence, but you would come in through parking lot C, the dirt lot that's past the guard shack, and they have 2 rows, and they have people standing there with the temperature gun on both sides so that they can get people through quickly. That's where your temperature will be taken from now on when school starts next Monday. So if you have a temperature, they will send you home. But we need to know that, so you will need to email me, text me, call me. Now, on every email I send you, I try to make sure that my cell phone is included. Please put me in your contacts and feel free to contact me for anything you need. And it's text, cell, or email, any way is fine, but text gets my attention. Yes, Jake?
My temperature was 98.7. I gotta go home. That was the temperature.
Okay, so in every class, we've got a technical person. And that brings up a very good point. We're going to get to in just a moment. So we aren't going to go over the walking to school. If you feel sick. Now, could you feel sick and it not be COVID? Absolutely. You know, if you just have stomach cramps, or you just, for some reason, you don't feel well and you need to stay home, stay home. But we would really need you to contact me to let me know, because now, if you don't contact me, I've got to contact you and say, I see you weren't here, are you sick? And you know, there will be people who will be genuinely sick, and it may have nothing to do with COVID. So we don't want to start the process of having to isolate people or isolate our class. We need to know and, you know, say, I've got the flu, or I've got a headache, or whatever, and fine, that's no problem. So you just stay home, watch the Zoom links if there are, or listen to the audio links. Believe God for your healing. We'll agree with you and believe for that. We'll pray. In fact, if you notify me, we would like you to notify us by 7 a.m. So if you know you're not coming to school, you should know that by 7 a.m. And so let me know. And then absences will be excused when you're sick. And those of your class will continue to be on campus. Now, if you have symptoms of COVID, does anyone know what symptoms of COVID are? Anything. Judith, were you going to give?
I just said I
Yeah.
do know, and I do know you can have COVID without any symptoms.
And, you know, they could call it COVID. You know, if you fall and break a leg, sometimes they'll say, well, you fell because you had COVID. You know, it's kind of crazy. But there are breathing symptoms that could be, you know, you're having a lot of coughing, and you're feeling very perspiring and weak and no energy. You know, that's a possible COVID symptom. And so we would like you to notify me and Mark Buitendog, the Dean of Students. Now, you'll probably not recall that. I'll put this in an email to you. But you can just contact me and I can contact him. So there's going to be a process where we are going to take extra precaution so that we don't have to take the whole class out, but there might be times where we as a class will have to isolate. If someone has come down with COVID, tested positive, that class will go off campus for 2 weeks and will do all of their classes by Zoom for 2 weeks. Now, why would we do that? It would be so that we don't have to take the whole school out. Because if that one person was sick, they didn't realize it, and the next day they figure it out, and then you've all been around them, so you are potentially exposed. So they'll take us out of class for 2 weeks. We'll return after 2 weeks. So are you understanding the logic of what they're trying to do? And so in the school, they have different zones. And so this is what we just mentioned, that we'll self-quarantine, we'll continue by Zoom or by audio links, depending. So traveling, you have to quarantine for the 14 days before you come to school, so that's why Jim Hawk couldn't be here today. He's got a few more days left. And then during the year, you can go to non-hotspots. Now, you can go on the web and you can look up COVID hotspots, and it'll show you a map, or it'll list things by city, or whatever. And then if you travel to a hotspot during your travels on break or whatever, then when you come back, you quarantine just yourself so that the whole class doesn't have to be quarantined. So, through the end of October, and then they're going to reevaluate. And frankly, how many of you believe this COVID is a bit, I was going to say trumped up, but I don't want to use that word. Overblown. Yes, overblown. So I believe that after the election, things will change. But until that time, Andrew has agreed to observe by the standards and procedures. And so any instructor that would have been here from out of state is now going to teach by Zoom up through the end of October. So we're going to resume live instruction after that, assuming that at that point things are changed. And so, you know, this is all kind of subject to change, and sometimes the changes come very quickly. But at any rate, the plan is that we'll resume live instruction. But last year, from March on through the end of the year, we did all our classes by Zoom here in Practical Government. We had Bishop Joshua Laweri from Uganda, who normally travels like 30 or 31 hours to get here. And he is the bishop over 30,000 churches of the born-again Pentecostal denomination in Uganda. So he has to leave his responsibilities, usually for 2 weeks, because if you're going to come here, you're going to have a whole day plus of travel and then another day of jet lag. And then on the other end, you're going to have the same. So he'll usually come for 2 weeks. And so this time, by Zoom, he taught us from what was 5 until 9 in the evening his time, so he could have his whole workday. He had no jet lag on either end. He'd had no travel. He had no problems getting in or out of countries who might have restrictions. And so it was fabulous, and we got all the benefit of the instruction that he would normally provide, and it was great for both of us. So we didn't feel like we missed a thing with the Zoom instruction. And so AVL will project the whole Zoom screen up on here, and so you guys will see the instructor, he will see you, and so it's a pretty great thing that has come. And that is just one thing that's going to make this our best year yet. You guys are overcomers. You know, there are people who didn't come because they didn't want to deal with the things that we're dealing with, quarantining or with zones or whatever. But you know what? Has God always provided a smooth rose garden kind of a path for people to go through life? You know, we are overcomers, and we are going to overcome. And what's more, God's plans haven't changed. He called you here. And so He still has a purpose for every one of you. So you're going to see Him help you, and we're all going to grow. It's going to be great. So here's the scheme on zones. We won't spend a lot of time, but I've illustrated here in blue that we are part of the blue zone, and they have a black line around the area that our cafe, and that's a restroom, our cafe is located. So you entered these doors from the parking garage, you came in, and right here is where you are right now. And so we, by the way, were in this classroom last year, and we have doubled from last year, so praise God. He's stirring up hearts. And so we go here and to the end of the hall for the restroom. If you want to do the cafe, you go down this long corridor, come out into the lobby, and use this cafe. Now, important, because it's a zone, you do not make a loop because now you're going into someone else's zone. And if we're gonna make this work, we have to stick to the areas that we're isolated from, connection with other people. So you use the cafe there, come back the same way into the classroom. So, also they are zoning the bookstore. If you've got all different years in there, they're in close proximity. So Mondays are our day from noon to 1. Now, if you've got a payment due and it's due on Friday and you can't go to the bookstore Friday, you have to wait till Monday, and they will make allowances for that. So Monday will be our day to go to the bookstore. And so I'll go through the rest of this quickly because it doesn't pertain to us. Can you guys all get the picture? So they've drawn a line down the middle of the auditorium. So this is one zone, that's another zone, and then they've added additional zones. So you can see, because of the size of first year, I think there's 340 or something in first year. It's awesome. And so they've got them zoned up by teams. And once again, so that team can only sit in that zone so that they don't have any cross-pollination, so to speak. And so that if that team gets sick, it's only that team that has to stay home. And so, similarly, you can see right here, which is our group. So there's our black border of where we're allowed to go. It also does include that cafe. And then the area, the waterfall, and the stairs going down to the lower level. Sad news, you guys never go to the lower level, and you never go to the mezzanine this year. The mezzanine is reserved for visitors and instructors. An instructor wants to sit in and watch a guest speaker, or visitors come and they can only sit in on first year this year. It won't be sitting in on other groups. So that area of the waterfall, the bookstore, is off limits. You don't go through that area. You kind of stay within your pathway and in your zone. And here is where the second year is, over in the banquet hall, and they have the main cafe reserved for them and the restrooms that are close to the banquet hall. And then they're divided into teams as well. And then the third year classes that are in the barn lower level have all of their areas zoned, which don't really apply to us. And so here's the area for the visitors can go up to this side of the balcony, instructors go up to the other side of the balcony. So that doesn't really apply to you, but just for your information. So here's where you came in. If you come down that hallway, you're going to make a right-hand turn at the end of that hallway, and then if you look down that hallway, you'll see far in the distance what I've zoomed in on. That's our restroom at the far end of that hallway. Now, if you come into that hallway and make a left turn at the end of that hallway, you go through 2 sets of double doors, and then you take a long hallway next to the auditorium. Some of you may never have been down that hallway, and that reaches the front lobby area, and you turn right to go to your cafe, which is this one. And so when you come back, remember, you don't go walking past the bookstore and past the mailboxes. You come back through these same double doors down that hallway to your classroom to stay within the zone. Now, on Friday, they're going to have an orientation where they're going to go over a lot of this. It's going to be done by live stream. So, charisbiblecollege.org, and then there's that Watch Live. You just click on the Watch Live, and I will send this in an email to you just so you have it. But if you, for some reason, you're working at that hour, they will have a recording that will be on D2L. However, they will require you to watch that and then take your yearbook or handbook test after you've watched that. So that is a mandatory thing. So, practicum opportunities. we have a lot of practicum opportunities. How many of you have already gotten started this summer on doing some practicum work? Hands up high. Look at this. Isn't that awesome? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of you, a third of the class have already started. And so there are 24 hours of practicum in each semester, so 48 for the year. Some of you, I'll bet you, have already almost got your practicum hours done. It's like, this was awesome that you were able to start that in the summer. But can you spare 2 hours a week? Well, you're going to have to. Because it's not a suggestion, it's a requirement. So if we're going to train you on being engaged in the culture and engaged with government, how are you going to learn? You won't learn it all out of a textbook. You'll learn it by doing. So basically, you want to engage in some kind of a organization that is somehow government related. Now, some things may seem kind of distant from government. Habitat for Humanity. Well, they build low-income housing. It's government assistance to, so that's a connection. The schools, Priscilla leads the Destiny Walkers, we had 2 people from last year's class that served with Destiny Walkers and did an awesome service to the schools. And they are working their way toward bringing a godly influence into the schools. So it doesn't all have to be working for the government, but it works in relation to the government in some way. You can invent a practicum if you can show me the value of how it serves the culture, the government, and so forth. So we've got many, many different opportunities. Students by Life, you all know Heather Haggard. So she's the head of that. And so you can volunteer with them. So that would be going to rallies, circulating petitions. Yes.
I don't think she's in charge of that anymore.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I don't think Heather's in charge of that anymore.
Oh, that might be because of now 3rd year for her.
Yes. So I think she said she passed it to, I think, some other second-year students, and I don't know who they are though.
Okay. So at any rate, you'll be able to connect with Students for Life. They are still ongoing, and it will just supply whoever that person. In fact, if you know or can let me know who that is, then I'll pass that information on, Vanessa. Thank you. And then you can circulate petitions and get signatures. You can volunteer at a party headquarters. I won't mention the name of any party, but you can probably find one. And then voter registration, volunteering for a campaign. Now, Denise, this would be a good time. Why don't you come on up and explain? Denise has some flyers here that she has brought with, and you can take one.
Well, Judith brought those flyers.
Oh,
and
okay.
they're wonderful.
Oh, great.
It
Great.
kind of lists the conservative beliefs and then the other side, socialistic beliefs, and we're going to see if we can find ways to disperse these to people. So, yeah, I'm interning with the Trump campaign. So this man over here, it's his fault. He sent out one of his many emails about opportunities, and I'm like, okay, I don't want to do that. I'm going to vote, and that kind of thing, but I don't think so. So God wakes me up in the middle of the night and said, well, if not you, who? And I have children, I have grandchildren, and I'm convinced that the outcome of this election will change their future forever, one way or another. So we were kind of off to a slow start, and I had to spend some time in California, and that's another long story. But anyway, we're on board now. I would like to say that if you have any interest in volunteering for the campaign, the hours are totally up to you. You can do an hour, you can do 2, you can do whatever. We're having a training tonight at 5 o'clock at the Republican headquarters here in Woodland Park. If you don't live here and you're in the Springs, I can direct you to the headquarters down there, and they do their training Tuesday and Thursday evening at 5:45. But anyway, we're doing it here at 5. They're coming up from the Springs to do the training, and we're training for voter registration and calling and canvassing. And the calling and canvassing are mainly automated, but canvassing is where you go door to door. And the voter registration is nonpartisan. So, and we know that there are many millions of Christians who are not registered to vote, and many millions who do not vote, but that's going to be different this year. And so, we found some places where you can go. I mean, Walmart told me, this was 3 weeks ago, I don't know if they've changed their mind, outside the building, we can do that. The gun store in town is going to be doing voter registration. He's going to be at the training tonight, and Ed, who's at the Republican headquarters, is going to be trained. So when people come in and say, where do I register, he can do it right on the spot. You could take a clipboard with your stuff and go from, to around to your neighbors and say, are you registered to vote? Would you like to? We'll find lots of places for you to do this if you would be interested. I would say the first thing is just come to the training. It's less than an hour and see, am I interested? Is this a place I could help? We're down to the wire here. The ballots come out, I think I was told October 9th they're going to be mailed. And I kind of thought it was earlier, but Austin said October 9th. And then people can return them immediately. So, we think November 3rd is the election, but much of the voting will be done long before November 3rd. So would love to have you participate. I've done the calling. I haven't done the canvassing yet. And like I said, it's automated. It's very easy to do. You get a few nasty people. It always amazes me. And they give you a script, so you don't have to figure out what to do. But you get wonderful people, too. So, and right now, when it comes to voter registration, Ed, he mans the Republican office, has been forwarding to me people who have questions or want to volunteer or have needs. So yesterday, I got a call from Randy, who lives out in Florissant, and he has Parkinson's. And he was just like, desperate. He said, he doesn't drive, I've been trying for weeks to find a way to register. I want to be able to vote for Trump. And I went, well, we will make sure you get registered. So if I have to drive out there and do it myself, I will. And just know, if you know anybody who is housebound, do they want to register? Because Colorado sends the ballots out so they can do their voting by mail, and this is just a brief period of time. We've got 8 to 10 weeks, and that's it. So this is not like going to be the rest of your life. It doesn't have to be 10 hours a week unless you want it to be. And we're going to be looking, I'm hoping we can kind of strategize tonight after the training other ways to do it. One is this. Judith, can she share real quick how she got this? Because I think, to me, it kind of gives us ideas.
And by the way, come on up, Judith. We have used at our Culture Impact team at our Church for All Nations in the Springs, we have used a party platform comparison that Family Research Council has made that shows the one party on one side, the other party on the other, and the issue like abortion or marriage or whatever in the middle, and it shows the stand and compares
Same
them.
kind of
So
thing.
we'll make that available too.
Right. Oh, that's wonderful. Okay.
Well, my sister actually did this. God has called both of us back to our hometown, and she bought a house. She's from Florida, but she bought a house in Michigan for the summer, and she contacted me and she said, "What can we put in a brochure that would really help people?" And so what she did is she put the principles that were originally established in this nation by the Republican Party and what they stand for, principles that are based on socialistic ideals, the Democratic platform, and she's got those there. And so she had these printed up professionally, and one of the things she's doing with them is in the local newspaper up in the Thumb of Michigan. I think she said it was $250 to have them stuffed into the newspaper. And it just happens that the head of the Republican Party is the editor of that newspaper, so
That helped.
He didn't have a problem with that. But she had, I think, 4,000 of these printed. Now, what she did is sent me a link and I printed off a bunch of them. You can take however many you want. I tried to do it on my cell phone, and it came out a little bit at the top and a little at the bottom. So I turned them over, and I finally got a copy. So I wouldn't suggest you give these away, but make copies, and you can use them any way you want.
Okay,
Great.
great.
So, thank you both, and
Yeah.
we have,
This was yours, right?
thank you, we have, really, the aim is for every one of you to become engaged somehow. That's the purpose of this course. It's not just to teach you theory, it's to help you find ways to affect our culture. And so already, people are doing that. That is awesome. I applaud you and thank you. And so I'll just continue. We have about 3 more minutes before a break. And this is a new position. So the people who stand out there in parking lot C with the temperature guns, 1 on each side of a car, 2 rows of cars. So that means 4 health screening interns. And they are giving a $1,200 tuition reduction for people who want to do that. That is significant. However, we have winter in Colorado, and this will be for the whole year until things change. And so you'll be out there in the weather from 6:30 until 7:45. So you won't miss any class time. It's a great opportunity. So you can apply for that, and you should look on CAMS for internships to find that. So, Friday is the general orientation. I've tried to give you an orientation that pertains to our class, but a little schematic of what's going on with the whole school so you understand. They'll go into quite depth on the zones and teams and so forth, some of which will apply to you, some of which will only apply to the other classes. That recording then, after you've watched it, or after you've watched the live thing on Friday, you take your handbook test, and then you're good to go. And so this really is what I had planned for this first hour. And then at 9, Pastor Mark Coward is going to join us, and he's the director. He is so inspiring. When I signed up to take practical government, I told Marion, you know what, if we are going to be under Pastor Mark at school, I want to be under him at church. Now, that's not practical for everyone, but that's just the way we felt. And so it has been wonderful. So at the Church for All Nations, he has allowed us to start a culture impact team, which you'll get a course on that this year. I'll be teaching on how you really impact the culture from your church. And you can set up voter registration, circulate petitions, support godly candidates, have experts, including legislators, come in and speak to your group. And these people are anxious to do that. In 2.5 years of having a culture impact team, we have never paid for a speaker. And we've had some outstanding. We've had several, I think 4 of our state legislators have spoken to us. And so there's a lot you can do to educate and inform your congregation. And we started out with maybe 30, 40 people coming to meetings. We have gotten up over 200 people from church coming to the Culture Impact Team meetings. It is fabulous. People are really seeing what's going on in our country, and they're saying, we have to do something. And some people, if they can just sign a petition or get signatures on a petition, they feel engaged. They feel, and they are. They're making a change in our culture. So that's what we've been able to do under Pastor Mark's leadership, and he's allowed our Culture Impact Team to have its own website. We'll share that with you, and it is fabulous. We've put videos on there that are so inspiring, like some of the evils that they're introducing that just say, not for my kids, not for my grandkids. It's like, I'm not going to stand for that. And so we've got a lot of things like that to share with you. So during our next hour and not quite 2 hours, because your registration time is at 11. And by the way, if you've already registered online, how many of you have registered online? Okay, you still go to registration because they have a gift bag, they have syllabi, they have resource material. You'll get more than just the opportunity to make your payment. When you go, you'll take the pathway that was the same way we described to the cafe. So you go out to the end of the hall, make a left turn, go through 2 sets of double doors, go down that long hallway that's next to the auditorium, and you end up in the front lobby. And so that's where you are to be for your registration. When you finish that registration, come back that same pathway, and then you'll be able to get to your car here in the parking garage.
So the front desk is
The front desk area, not right at the front desk, but in that whole lobby will be tables set up, and you've gone through this before, where you go through this table and then they send you to that one and that one and that one. You get the lanyard with your badge and your picture and so forth. So that will be the process. So right now we have a 10-minute break. That's when, and by the way, I stopped at the donut mill. There's fresh donut holes, and there's the Keurig. And so here is Pastor Mark Howard. So we'll have a break. You guys can mingle and use the restroom, have some coffee, donuts, whatever, and then we'll pick up at 9 o'clock.
And I just really dove into the reading she gave us. Like, I'd never really been interested in history and government before, and now I was right there where she wanted me to be. But first year when I was here, I came here right out of high school because I was like, I don't need to go to a normal college. First year, I was going through the third year experience, and I was like, practical government, it's pretty cool. I kind of am interested in that, but at the same time, I don't know if I really want to go quite that far into this subject. And then I think it was a week later, it was like God just dropped a little word in my heart. He's like, you're going to go to practical government third year. And I was like, oh, okay. I could do that. I'm interested in that. It was a little overwhelming, but it's the clearest word from God I've ever had, so it's overwhelming. But, yeah, and just with that in mind, going through first and second year, I've just had more and more peace about it. And so this is why I'm here.
Good morning. My name's Clay Copeland. I came to this class because I was at a I think it was a family conference of Andrews here several years ago. And it was before this class was even formed. Pastor Mark and I believe Andrew was up there talking with him. And they were talking about this class. And I thought, this is awesome. Because that Constitution on that wall, I'd never read until this summer in my life. And so I liked history. I've enjoyed the history, and I enjoyed the history of our country. But our country is something that no one else has. That's the reason we've got all the people coming in. And so I think there's a lot to be learned here from all of these people, and I really look forward to getting to meet and know all of you the rest of this year. Thank you.
And I just want to interject, like myself, Clay and I are not millennials. And I wanted you to know that in our class, when Marion and I went through, there was a lady at graduation time who was 89, Jeannie. And then I graduated from practical government with Richard Anthony, who was an attorney, had gone through law school, had practiced law, was now a adjudicator, like a judge for cases. And he learned things, he said, in practical government that he had never learned in law school. You know, Richard Harris, who's an attorney, said they don't really have you read the Constitution in law school. They have you read books about judges and their decisions and their opinions, not the Constitution itself. You guys are going to know more about the Constitution than some lawyers and than most legislators. So there's no limit to the age at which we can learn. So Jennifer, go ahead.
So my name is Jennifer West, and I'm going to make this very condensed because I know the real one is probably 5 or 6 minutes. But so in 2004, the Lord gave me a hotel to build one day, someday, I don't know. And very large hotel. And in 2009, He said it would become a place of refuge for friends and family. And now I get that today. This year I get that part. And then I knew I was coming to business when I decided to come to Charis. But then in first year, He said government. And I was like, no. And He said, yeah. And I was like, no. And He said, yeah. And so, boring, yeah. So I finally said, okay, Lord, if that's what You want. And then, back up 2013, I was looking for a new job, like a totally different job. And I sat down to create a resume, and I ended up drawing out the hotel. And I'm like, well, this is great, but I still don't have a resume. And I heard Him say servant of the city, and I thought, oh, the hotel is going to be servant of the city. And then in 2018, I was working the Healing is Here conference and was talking to a lady, and she was asking me, what are you going to do, business? And then I'm going to say government. What are you going to do with that? And I said, I don't know, I may run for mayor of Woodland Park. It just came out of my mouth. And then I'm like, who said that? And 2 weeks later, same exact thing happened, and I'm like, okay, I don't know what to do with that. So, Lord, if that's what You want, fine. If that's me, then it'll go away. So, and I'm telling her this story, and then I stopped talking, and I heard again, servant of the city, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm the servant of the city, not the hotel. So I'm like, oh wow, this is a whole new look on government school now. So I don't know the what, the when, the how, the where, or anything, but those are the pieces I have. So that's why I'm here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Priscilla Lua from Lincoln, Nebraska. I just got to say that because I love Nebraska. I think what got me here, as I recall as a child, don't worry, I'm not going to go here for a couple hours, but when I was a child, I always used to want to be in the military, and I wanted to be an officer. Out of all my siblings, as you know, I was the one with the American flag and playing with G.I. Joes and kind of things like that. That patriotic spirit was always in me, and I was never taught that. I just really liked the USA. And so the Olympics will come on. I was the only one with the American flag in my family and stuff. And so I was always going against them in the Olympics and things like that. So as I came back to here to Colorado, to Charis, the first year I was thinking I was going to ministry school. By December, it was already, there was something in me that was drawing me into practical government, but I just kind of ignored it until we had the 30-year experience. And I sat in practical government, that 30-year experience, and I just started bawling because He just confirmed it. I was crying in the back. I mean, I was literally, and they brought Kleenex and everything. I was crying. And then I went to the ministry school and sat there, and I was just empty. I was hollow. Like there was nothing there. And I was like, okay, Lord. So I cried. I got to admit, I cried for a long time, like for about a week, I would say, because I just, I don't know anything about government. And so I was a little scared, and then the Lord just said, well, are you done? Because are you going to do this? And I was like, oh, fine. Yeah, I'm done. Thank you for letting me cry for a whole week. But yeah, after that, it just, the schools came up in my heart and that kind of thing, because I've always worked with high-risk adolescents. And so yeah, that's kind of what the school started, and now I'm here and just learning more and gaining more knowledge. So.
Well, my name is Judith Darlington, and I had no idea I was going back to school at this age. But my husband wanted to come out here. So Charis, he got kind of hooked on Andrew. I didn't like Andrew at first at all because I was a therapist, and he started talking about depression, and it was a different thing than I had ever learned. So, but after a while, I started listening to him, and I kind of got onto him. And Claire said, "You know, I need to know the Lord better. I'm almost 80, and I just don't know the Lord that well." So he said, "I think I could learn from Andrew." So that's what got us out here. And I said, "Well, if you're going, I'm going with you, and I'm going to school too, because I never thought I liked to go to school, but boy, Bible school, that really turned me on." So anyway, we got out here, and I knew I'd go. You know, he was planning on going to the third year, and he changed his mind on that. But I said, "I think I'm still supposed to go to some kind of a third year," and I assumed it was ministry, because I'm a Christian therapist and have been for 30 years. And in my first career, I was a teacher, an elementary school teacher, and I love history. So I went to ministry, third year experience, and thought that was probably it. And then I went to government, and my baby leaped, as they say. So that's what got me here. But what God had told me in the middle of the year, when Marcus Wick was here, I was starting to get a sense of where he wanted me to go. And Marcus said, "Get a specific word, because then when things get hard, you know, you'll stick with it." And what he said to me, I still get emotional about it, but he said, "Go to Deckerville," and this is a little town of about 1,000 people, and up in the town of Michigan, but that's where I was born and raised. And he said, "I want to transform it." I didn't know what that meant. I had no idea till I read Ecclesia. So now I know where I'm going.
Hi, I'm Denise Hubbard, and I didn't even know who Andrew was 5 years ago, but then here I am, and I knew I'd be doing 3 years. I came from Northern California. Don't hold that against me, please. And I figured third year would be business or government. I've always kind of been a government junkie, but I came out of the business background, and that's where my education, that kind of stuff is. And so I wasn't here too long when I met Robert Zuluaga, who he's a contractor, but he was doing work around my house. And I didn't even know he was associated with it. And I kind of said, "Well, I'll do the third year, and it'll either be business or government." And not too long, he said, "Do you realize?" And I said, government's practical and all that kind of stuff. And he said, "Do you realize, Denise, that you're passionate about government? That when you talk, your eyes light up, you're passionate." And I went, "Well, yeah, but business was more practical." So this last spring, God made it really clear. And the year before at Wealth Builders, because what I would think in California is I go, "Okay, God, maybe when I go there, I'll have people I can talk to." Because I've got this mind that kind of, goes off, and I'm like, "What about this? What about that?" And so probably about a year and a half ago, Ed Silvoso, who wrote Ecclesia, was at Wealth Builders. And when I heard him, I went, "Yes!" Transforming communities, states, it's just like this huge thing. And so I have no idea what I'm going to do with all this, but that makes my baby leap. And the whole culture thing, because I've got kids and grandkids, and constantly I'm going, how do you reach them? How do you reach the millennials? How do you, pull them in, teach them, make a difference? So this is going to be so exciting, because I don't have to know. God knows.
Yeah.
Hi everybody, I'm Annie Zebert Wazabok. I was born and raised in Cape Town, South Africa, and I came to America in 2008. I have always had a heart for America. Even before I was born again, I had a desire for America in my heart. South Africans usually go to England. After high school, you usually go to England. It's a common thing for South Africans to go to England. And one day after school, some friends and I were all talking, and they said to me, "So when you're done with school, what are you going to do?" And I said, "I want to go to America." And they all said, "Why America?" And I said, "I don't know. I just want to go to America." And I said, "Because England is too cold and grey. I don't like the cold. So I will be needing all of your prayers in the winter season, because I have barely seen snow in my life before." and I'm currently fighting buying snow boots. I'm like, do I really need those snow boots?
Yes.
So America's always been on my heart. I just didn't know it would bring me to today. So I did my first 2 years in Miami. That's where I came when I first came in 2008. I was in Florida and I did my first 2 years, 2018, 2019. I did Caris, first and second year in Miami, graduated this year in May. But in 2018, when I started school, I knew third year was going to be something I was interested in, but I knew it meaning moving to Colorado, and I didn't like the cold, so I told the Lord I won't. And long story short, in December this year, I went to my husband and said to him, I'm finishing school in 5 months, would you be up to moving to Colorado? And he said, honey, I've been born and raised Floridian for 55 years. I will never see snow in my life unless I'm skiing down a slope. But here we are. The Lord spoke to his heart, and we ended up moving in the middle of COVID. We had packed up our condo in Florida and moved out to Colorado in March. And when I moved out here, I did not know there was a gay governor. And I did not know that. I did not know the state was in the condition that it was. I didn't know anything about the state. And when I came to the Truth and Liberty Coalition back in June this year, a lady pulled me over to the side. It was kind of weird. I had my 6-year-old son with me, and she said to me, do you vaccinate your son? And I said, no, ma'am, I don't. And she said, is he homeschooled or is he in the public school? And I said, homeschooled. And she said, this Sunday they're going to pass a bill at the Capitol to mandate vaccinations for homeschoolers as well as public school system. And I said, no, not on my watch. And that's when the Lord started stirring my heart, because I ended up calling this organization that is against vaccinations, the mandate being pushed for vaccination bill. And I ended up speaking to the vice president of this organization, and she said, you know, Annie, the one problem we have is we don't have enough Christians running for office. And as she said that, my baby leaped. Whoop. And I began to do some research, and I came to the Truth and Liberty Coalition, and I ended up listening to you, Pastor Mark Howard, and I actually went home and Googled you, and I researched you.
Be careful.
And I researched the church and just researched what Truth and Liberty Coalition was, and I ended up binge watching, I don't know how many of your teachings, and the more I started watching, listening to your heart, this biblical worldview, my heart was leaping. So I actually just changed from ministry school to pastoral government 2 weeks ago. I emailed the school and called the school and said, I feel the Lord is changing my heart. And when I called a couple of friends who are voices of wisdom in my life, and I told them what the Lord was doing, they said, Annie, that is not you, that is the Lord 100%. Your heart for America is unbelievable. I am not a citizen at the moment. So the fact that I'm even here, I'm not even a citizen yet, I'm a green card holder, is all the Lord. So I'm excited what He's going to do.
And I'd like to share that I've spoken with Annie, and I told her God has put freedom in the hearts of all men. Yes. It does not matter your country of origin or the country to which you're going to serve. God has established principles that our founders recognized, but that they apply to all men, and wherever you go, you can take these principles and see them work.
Yes. I'm Ryan Steidinger. I know most of you. Practical government. I flunked an open book history test. That's how much I liked it. Never read the Declaration of Independence, or Clay, or anything. I thought anybody in government was crooked. So ironically, I was signed up for ministry school because I really didn't know what else to do. I wasn't even planning on third year, but I felt like the Lord was calling me to third year. And but about 6 years ago, the Lord gave my wife Lori and I a scripture. It's Colossians 3:15. It said, "Let the peace of God rule in your heart." And I just didn't have peace about ministry school, but I didn't know why. And so finally, during Healing is Here, I shot an email out to Pastor Mark to see if he would meet with me, and to Greg Moore. And they did. And I met with Greg, and I left, and Lori's like, well, what are you going to do? I'm like, I don't know. I said, I'm going to meet with Mark. So I met with Mark at Starbucks, and 3 hours later, I knew that God was in it. You know, hey, you're going to practice. I don't know what for yet, but I've had a number of dreams. And when I left, those dreams started coming back. And it's like, that's what that meant. That's what that meant. So then I met with Brother Dave and his dear wife at their place, and he gave me this whole list of reading that I was like, oh my word, I'm behind. So I don't know where it's going, but I'm telling you, I am, every day, I get more sold out to our country, our founders, the truth, really, the original intent. How about that? So here I am.
My name is Sue Patterson, and like Franz and Clay's, my story is the same. I knew I was going to do a third year, but I wasn't sure what track it was. I thought it was going to be the global outreach. I just couldn't find peace with it. And I was watching Joseph Z and how he believes America and Israel and how important we are to our country, how it was founded, and the original intent, and how important it is to the whole world, and how it has had an impact ever since, because we have the longest reigning single government. And I was watching Joseph Z, and God put it in my heart, you're going to go to practical government. And I said, I'm just a plain Jane. I'm not anybody. And he put in my heart, that's what America's all about, we the people. We the people. And so I don't know, like everyone else, what God is going to do, but I know we have our future generations are at stake. And we have to be a voice. And we are the only nation that we are God's voice. And I think that's pretty powerful, so that's why I'm here.
Amen.
Hello, I'm Lauren James, and I'm from Houston, Texas. And like Priscilla, I also wept. I cried during first year experience, and I'm actually holding back tears today. I feel like this is why I came here. Was for third year practical government. I knew from day one this is where I would be. And I'm just realizing, just sitting here, the significance of this season of preparation. And I'm so thankful. And every time we've heard Pastor Mark speak, it was just so powerful. And we keep talking about our babies leaping and just the Lord downloading, excitement in our hearts. And I just can't wait to see what this year entails. And I'm so thankful for the books that we were required to read. I'm coming in as a fresh slate. I did not go to college after I graduated from high school. I don't really recall very much of my history from high school. So with the books that I did read, I feel like I have some knowledge underneath my belt finally, and I can't wait to see what the rest of this year holds.
And I'd like to interject. Can you pass the mic back? So, Lauren, tell us the title that you've just been promoted to.
Oh, custodial supervisor at CARES. So I'm over the CBC facility and HQ facility, just supervising the custodial departments.
And that's full-time?
Full-time, yes.
And she's going to practical government school.
Yeah, so please pray for me.
So if you come up to me with an excuse about you didn't have time, I'm going to send you to Lauren.
I'm Sherry. I'm from Georgia, if you didn't notice. I, for one, am glad I'm not in ministry school. That was the last thing I wanted to do. I feel like we live in God's house, and we've let it get turned upside down, and it's time to put it right side up. And I see a lot of ignorance and a big, big need for education, and so that's why I'm here.
And before you hand the mic away, Sherry will be our administrative intern here in the class. Let's give her a round of applause. And so Sherry's going to take a load off my shoulders. Our class has doubled from last year, and so there's a lot to do. And Sherry will keep track when a guest instructor or myself gives you an assignment and a due date or a test date. She will keep track of all those, and she will email you, so you please check your emails. Now, how many of you check your emails every day? Or should I say, are there any of you who don't check your emails every day? Okay, new habit. Check your emails every day because we will communicate by email. There has been some talk among the coordinators whether we should communicate with you by Facebook since so many people are on Facebook. How many people don't do Facebook? So we're going to go with emails, and that's just a habit that you'll need to get into because we might get a notice early in the morning about something that's changing our school day. So please be in the habit of checking your emails regularly. And if you have the capability of having your emails come on your phone, please check them that way as well. So Sherry will be in touch with you.
Wow, this has been a long time coming. 6 years ago?
So Zach, introduce yourself.
Zachary Wright from Texas. Sorry about that. But
and by the way, let me mention Zach will be our classroom intern. So the two positions differ in that administrative for Sherry will be keeping in contact with you and etc. The classroom intern, Zach, will sit in the back. He will watch for you to raise his hand, your hand. He'll bring you a microphone. And by the way, if you will please wait until the microphone arrives before you start making the comment that is just bursting out of you, because we are recording all these sessions for those who are absent. And we want the questions and the comments to be part of the recording. So that will be Zach's duties, among others.
August of 2011, I was watching TBN thinking, was raised on it my whole life, thinking I'd seen everything they had to offer. But then at 2:30, Building on the American Heritage with David Barton and Rick Green come on. And for 30 minutes, I was completely mesmerized. Wanting to be a pastor since I was 10, when Mr. Barton brought out all of the involvement pastors and the clergy had in the founding of the United States, I was homeschooled, I had a great education, but he brings it out in a way that you never think about before. And I was addicted to Wall Builders Addicted since then. And I started watching Andrew because he started having David Barton on his show. Don't tell him I said that. But when they said that they were starting a practical government school, I looked into Bible schools for years. But this was the only one that, name a Bible school that offers a practical school of government. And wanting to not just have the spiritual knowledge, but the practical and political knowledge to engage a society, to speak directly into the issues and bring clarity, bring hope. It was important to me, and that's why I'm here today. It's again, I say it's been a long time coming, but I'm glad I'm here, and I'm looking forward to what the Lord has for us this year. Very unique, but I believe it will be the best year yet.
And Chris, just hold the mic, would you? I'd like to introduce my assistant coordinator, Chris Shea. And Chris, keep the mic. She is kind of a behind-the-scenes person. She's not looking to be up in the front, but Chris takes the majority of the load off my back by scheduling, and she'll present you schedules that will either come to you by email or in paper, and it's an amazing amount of work to connect with all the guest instructors and coordinate their schedules and their travel arrangements and changes with COVID and etc. So Chris is a huge blessing and a huge reason why we can operate as effectively as we do. And Chris and I graduated together in the first class, and she and a classmate, Kim Kohler, were the top door knockers for the Trump campaign in 2016 in Colorado. And I think that deserves a round of applause. We got to meet Trump and personally, engage with him. And so Chris has had government on her heart. And just share a bit of your own, how God has brought you to this point.
I've always loved America. I just, like Priscilla, I was born with it. I like John Philip Sousa. I like General Patton, World War II, and I loved Israel. as a child. I was drawn. So I never wanted to go to Bible college. I mean, it didn't occur to me when I became a Christian. I was living on the East Coast in Pennsylvania, and that would never have occurred to me. But I was so bored with church, but I had been born again. So I quit church, and I accidentally ran into Andrew Womack on television, and he had a Bible college, or he was building one, and it became more and more interesting to me. And I looked in Virginia, in the area of Pennsylvania, to find a Bible college. I thought, I need to know more about the Bible. So it ended up that the Lord just called me to come to Colorado. And I had no clue. I didn't want to be a minister. I didn't know. I just was interested in learning more about the Bible. And they didn't have anything practical government, and I didn't know how long I'd be there. But I figured about 2 years. I told my sons, 2 years we're supposed to be here. And then I decided to stay. I just stayed here, and I went to business. Went to business school. Very, very good, because they didn't have practical government. And I'll never forget when Pastor Mark and Andrew talked about it, practical government school. I about jumped out of my seat because I was so excited. I had no idea I didn't know. I used to say, Andrew needs to be a little more political. You know, it just needs to be a little more engaged. And here it was. And that was for me. And I'm so thrilled that I can be here and work here. This is an exciting time. It's just outrageous. I'm more political than ever. Sometimes when I get started, I can't stop. So, people who walk away quietly. But it's important. It's so important, and you're in a perfect time here. I can't think of a more exciting time here. And you will be so engaged, and you will be so connected, and you will be so empowered. And what you're going to do is magnificent. Each one of you has a plan. God has a plan for you. He will reveal it, and you will be on fire, because that's what this nation needs in order to save it. So I'm thrilled.
And before you start, Vanessa, I'd like to share that you are in a unique year, like Chris and I were, that you are in a presidential campaign year here in Practical Government School. You can serve in a campaign for a godly president or other godly people running for office, which you can't do every year. You know, every 2 years we have midterms, but now you have both. You have the presidential election, you have other elections, so you guys take advantage of the opportunity. Vanessa, go ahead.
My name is Vanessa Anholtz. I'm from Kansas, northwest Kansas, so very rural, very conservative. My family has always loved politics and government, and I've been like, I want to be a doctor. I like science. And we came to Colorado to Andrew's Summer Family Bible Conference in 2018, and I remember listening to Pastor Cowart talk about the Black Robe Regiment, and I thought that was really interesting, and my family was like, I want to go to Practical Government School, and I was like, no, I don't want to. But I just finished first year online, so I was starting my second year, and just like all the rest of you, third year experience, I wanted to go to ministry school, sat in on it, nothing. Sat in on practical government, my baby was leaping, and I was just like, stop. I don't know anything about government, I don't know anything about history, it still does not interest me. I'm still like, can I just learn about cells and the mitochondria and science, and that's what I like. And so, it's been tough. Like, I don't think this way. I have to retrain my brain to think about government and history, because it's just not been a thing that's interested me ever. And so every time I talk to my family, though, they're so excited that it's just like, fine, I'll get on board with you guys. So they're really encouraging, and I think I had a friend this summer, her family, they're Christians, they're born again, but they're not involved, and they don't think it's our place to get involved in government or to even, stand up for what they believe or anything like that. And she goes, Vanessa, how do I get them to understand we're part of this. And I was like, you have to educate them. You have to get them to see how this country was formed, how it was originally intended to be for the people, that we are the people involved. And so I feel like God has me here for family, for the nuclear family that's under attack right now. The abortion has been on my heart, and just helping educate my friends for their family, to get them involved, to get the Christians back involved in government and all of the things that the church has pulled away from. Because if we don't have a voice, everybody else will, and that's what's kind of happened to our country. So.
I'd like to share, how many of you have heard of Charles Finney? Okay, you know what his occupation was? An attorney. And God got him born again and on fire for sharing the gospel with the world. And so God will take you sometimes out of the box. And your scientific mind, Vanessa, will look at things in a way that some of us won't, that will be able to communicate to others or come up with ideas or thoughts or plans on how we can transmit these thoughts for the benefit of others. So God will use what you are.
Hi, my name is April Zlatnik. I'm from Austin, Texas, so hook 'em horns. Anyway, so when I did my first year experience, I just popped into practical government just to see, and I remember the first 10 minutes, it was like the Lord rolled out my life like a scroll and showed me all the ways He had already prepared me for this. And it was just incredible to see that. And then, even this last year, it was really funny because I would still look at other schools, but it was as if every time I did, everything else would just lie flat on the table and practical government would be 3D. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to practical government. Thank you, Lord. But then, I'm thinking back to just the whole process, and there's so much, of course, to it, and so much in the training. I mean, I've gotten to live in China, in a communist nation. I know what that's like, and I know what we have here that's so precious. But in addition to that, I got to grow up reading the stories of Abigail Adams and, all the different people that made this nation, that laid down their lives. And I just feel like this is our opportunity to join the ranks of the great. And I'm excited about that because I feel like I never thought necessarily in this well-established country that we would have an opportunity to really rise up and do like what they did, but we do. We get to be like them, like that great cloud of witnesses that are watching us, right? That we get to be a part of it and carry that torch for the next generation. So it's super exciting, and I'm dorky in that if I want leisurely, fun reading time, I'll even go read like The American Girl and learn about like someone in the 1800s or, stuff like that. But I have no doubt, I've had so many dreams and visions from the Lord, and even as a teenager, I'm just now remembering, as a teenager, I had constant dreams of me being in a political setting, and I didn't tell you this, Dave, in a political setting in the same room with the Antichrist. And so that was kind of like eye-opening as a teenager, but I don't really know what all those mean. I just know that I get to be a part of doing something great for God with all of y'all.
So just a couple of comments. We have not strictly adhered to the break schedule, and I'm going to have us take about a 7-minute break. And then Pastor Mark is going to share it'll be about 5 after, and so he'll have about 40 minutes. And we're going to dismiss you at 10:45. Your registration time is at 11. If you want to take belongings back to the car before you go over the registration, because they'll be handing you a gift bag and syllabi and whatever, you're free to do that. 11 o'clock is when they're expecting you up at the front desk for registration. And so when you finish with them, you are done for the day. And then next week, Monday, August 31, is the start of classes. So we've got some amazing teachers like Pastor Mark Howard that'll be in on the first week. But before you go on your break, I just wanted to make sure that you all are on board now. Zach, you weren't here, but the pathway we take, if we go up the hallway, and turn right, our bathroom is at the end of the hallway. If you go up the hallway and turn left, you go through 2 double doors and down the long, narrow hallway that's adjacent to the auditorium, which will bring you out to the front lobby area. That's where our cafe is, just close to there, and that's also where registration is. So we are not allowed to go in any other areas of the building because having the zones is a way of us avoiding, if one person is sick in one zone, they can just have that zone stay home. So we want to honor that, and so we are to wear our masks when we're traveling through the building and when you are coming to and from the classroom, so we want to honor that. So otherwise, you have a 6-minute break now until 5 after, and then Pastor Mark will speak. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. I got to tell you, this is one of our favorite times, or mine, I know, to just hear how y'all got here. And I'm so encouraged. There's 5 of us Texans here. Andrew's from Texas, right? I said the Lord had to send these Texans up here to straighten this place out. So, okay, we're up. Good. And so what I want to do today is just really share from the heart. Talk about, how we got started, how we're here today. So, some of you've heard this. Andrew and I have been knowing each other 42 years this year. I know I don't look that old, but 42 years ago we met at a Charles Capps meeting. And I grew up in West Texas, a little town called Plainview, in the Lutheran Church. And as I affectionately say, it was drier than corn shucks. And but I am grateful for them because the Word of God is solid in the Lutheran Church in the Missouri Synod. So the Lord dropped all of these seeds of the Word of God into my heart. And it didn't bear fruit till later, but about high school, the Lord started watering those seeds. So about 77, 78, I really got on fire for the Lord. And so I started saying, well, Lord, send me somebody to teach me the Bible. And ran onto this Texan, just an added plus, from Kenneth Copeland. And I found him on a radio. And then there was this gentleman named Andrew Womack right after that. Then there was 2 other guys. So I'm in a Charles Capps meeting in 1978, and there was a worship leader up there named Happy Caldwell, which some of y'all know, Happy. And I went there, and he said, introduce yourself to the person next to you. So I said, hi, my name's Mark Cowart. And this gentleman next to me said, hi, my name's Andrew Womack. And I said, I listen to you every day on the radio. I'd never seen his picture. They were living in Lamar, Colorado. And then I would go to his meetings because he gave the cassette tapes away. And, back then I joked about it. When Andrew and I met, we were both so poor we couldn't pay attention. So anyway, been knowing him that long. And then eventually they moved up here. And so in and out of the years, we've had a graduation or 2 of Charis, which was Colorado Bible College back then at CFAN. And so Andrew called one day about the declaration of dependence on God. We met at Swiss Chalet. We thought that's really what we were to meet about. And I was excited, and so we were sitting there. And this is where the Practical Government School got started. Came together, I should say, catalytic event. Because he started telling me, he was telling me things he said on national and international TV. And of course, I've known Andrew, all these. I said, Andrew, did you say that on television? National and you said that? Typical Andrew. Well, Mark, it's the truth. What a revolutionary thought, right? And I think most of you know people in the level that Andrew is, that's what I call rare air. A lot of guys won't go there because it does affect the giving. But God's greater than all of those things. So anyway, we started talking, and I drove out, and I had this conviction of the Holy Spirit hit me like a freight train. I thought, because he said, Mark, you ought to teach more at the school. I said, well, I do, when I'm asking people. So anyway, I drove out and he told me they were talking about starting a practical government with David Barton. We've had David Barton, and I'd grown up, watching his stuff. So the bottom line, I went home and I told my wife, and I said, they're trying to start a practical government school. And I said, they just don't have a director for it. And she goes, you'd be perfect for that. And I went, well, never thought about it, but I said, that is my passion. And I want to start in here my journey, because I was taught you don't talk about certain things in the pulpit. You stay in this little 2-foot square box, or you risk your 501c3. And so I want to take you down just a little bit of that journey. And so this phrase is one that I have said more times. Woodrow Wilson, a nation which does not remember what it was yesterday, does not know what it is today, nor what it's trying to do. We're trying to do a futile thing if we do not know where we came from or what we've been about. Now, I want to say this. This man was a racist. But the truth is in what he said. He was a Democrat, I believe. And I recently had some of you, if you got to see Derek Wilburn, Derek has been a friend for a lot of years, African-American, and very conservative. And he's, been accused of a lot of things. And he said, I don't care if somebody says something that's racist, and they are racist, as long as what they're saying is the truth. And this is the truth, because history is his story. His story. You're going to find that out. David Barton will teach us, potentially this year, all revival breaks out around history. Josiah, Old Covenant. Bring those scrolls out. Let's. Oh my God, you mean this is who we were? This is what God did for us? We're in serious trouble. The founding of this nation is so rich that I think the most grievous thing for me is that I didn't start when I was in kindergarten learning about our nation. Our founders told us, teach your children. Teach them the Constitution. David Barton held up, I think, Zach, you watched that Heritage series, the American Heritage, and he had Rick Green on. He held a little book we used to teach our grade school kids. He goes, I do not think Supreme Court justices could pass the questions that are written in here. The New England Primer, that used to be the reading book. We taught them with Bible things, 10 Commandments. And so the enemies come in and really, let me see if I can do this. Okay, so moving forward, 2008, something happened to me. I was in my study at the house. I'd be embarrassed for you to see what happened. I was there just looking over some things for 4th of July. It was about June. I was by myself. And I thought, I'm going to get some good patriotic music to play during 4th of July. And as I did, I found some old video and all of these great landmarks, Mount Rushmore, our Capitol, and just so many things. And the Spirit of the Lord came on me, and I said, Lord, you're not telling me that Obama is going to be our next president. And I didn't hear a thing from the Lord, but I had something in me. So I started studying. And then in 2012, General Jerry Boykin came, the Lord used him, and I decided I'm done being silent. And so I participated in Pulpit Freedom Sunday, and these were the headlines. So I got up and I said, here's who I'm voting for, here's who I hope you vote for. I broke every rule, along with several other pastors that were daring, asking, inviting the IRS to come to church and hear what they say, because they were trying to get them to take churches to court so that we could prove the unconstitutionality of the Johnson Amendment. We don't know our history. So somebody texted me after church that morning. All the media was there, reports, all this. And they said, you ought to watch the news. I think you're the top story locally. And sure enough, local church breaks law, preaches politics. And the fact of it is, I got up the next Sunday and I said, this is not a true statement. I did not break the law, because you're going to learn. We used to have pre-election sermons. Pastors were the most informed people of the day. And by the way, this is not just for pastors or people that are going to be in the political offices. There's this phrase, I think we've all heard it, called "we the people." And you are the government. Bill Federer is going to teach us, who is the king in America? You are. It's the wisdom of God from Isaiah chapter 33. The Lord is our judge. The Lord is our lawgiver. The Lord is our king. He will save us. There's your three branches of government: executive, judicial, and legislative branch. Right out of Isaiah. I never knew that growing up. So we're going to be getting into history and finding out who we are, because how many's ever worked with a person that's lost their memory or losing their memory? Anyone? What's that like? It's a difficult thing. I know of many cases where when people start losing their memory, they're very frustrated because they can't recall who you are or an event. So the conversation can't even be had like normal. And so this, some of you mentioned this Black Robe Regiment. I grew up in West Texas. I went to a fairly good sized public school. We read the Bible every day, pledged allegiance to the flag, okay, and prayed in public school. 1963, it was kicked out of our public schools. If you look at the stats, then all of a sudden you'll see SAT scores go down, crime goes up. It was safer and is safer in some city streets than it is in schools right now. But this term I'd never heard of, and I think most of you probably have. Here's an iconic, famous Black Robe Regiment who happened to be a Lutheran pastor, Peter Muhlenberg. And in January of 1776, he stood up in his black robe, and he read from Ecclesiastes chapter 3, time and a season for everything, time for peace, time for war. And he said, the time for war has come. Who will go fight for their country? And according to his nephew, 162 men leaned over, kissed their wives, walked out and enlisted in the Continental Army. Within a few days, he had 300 men. The church led the battle. Secular historians have proven, had it not been for preachers of the day, clergy of the day, there never would have been a revolution. If the revolution, they say, historians, would have broken out, it wouldn't have been sustainable without the pastors. The pastors led the charge. Now, basically, they covered issues, anything that went on. If it was a solar eclipse, an earthquake, they'd go to the scripture and say, this is what the Bible says. So when it came to tyranny and all of the things that England was imposing, God flowed through them. And this is also proven. Every single right that is set forth in the Declaration of Independence was preached from American pulpits prior to 1763. So here's what you'll find. Essentially, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution are children of the pulpit. And now, Peter Muhlenberg's brother, Frederick, was also a minister, and he thought his brother was a little off. He was a little too radical and didn't really agree with his vocalizing, I should say, of what he was doing, until the British came and burned his church down. Then he thought, well, maybe my brother's not quite so radical. I think we're seeing that happen today. There are people right now, I'm just going to say it, there's a man that preached that he felt, very well-known man, he has some good things to say, in some other areas he just is off the rail. You don't want to hear what he has to say about tongues or spiritual gifts, but some stuff is really good. He thought that our founders were in rebellion birthing this country. That's in print, and yet he is one of the pastors right now that is defying Governor Newsom in California. And Governor Newsom said, you will not meet, you will not sing, you will not have Bible studies. And he said, oh, yes, we will. Christ is head of the church, not Caesar. President Trump called him last Sunday. and thanked him for standing out. So never mark anybody off. I've had strong opinions about him, and ask the Lord to forgive me. So, John Adams, this is, and let me share this. What time do I need to be done today?
At 10:40.
Oh, okay. So, revisionism. How many have heard that term? Okay. Basically, rewriting history. But here's what we need to know. It's not what they're saying that does the damage. It's what they're not saying. Okay, I had a friend that had a very large food ministry. It was, at one point, it peaked out at $150 million a year budget. He went overseas and saw these children on mission fields going blind. And he's like, why are these children going blind? And if I remember right, I think it's vitamin A, a micronutrient. If children don't get vitamin A in their diet, their sight will not come forth. Man, when I heard that, I said, that's what has happened in America. It's not what we're saying, because there's some good stuff coming out of pulpits in America. It's motivational, it's inspirational, it's scriptural. It's what's not being said. I have one of my staff members, I know David Marion knows Sherman, call him the Shermanator. He's on staff. He's a retired Army Ranger, combat vet. If I need anything done, I give it to him. He executes, okay? And so one day we were talking. He said, there's a thing in our United States Armed Forces, and he was particularly in the Army, called a Section 99. And did you know in our military that during a time of war, if you avoid the enemy, there are certain scenarios you can be executed? Because when you abandon your post, people's lives are at risk. So I said, serious, Sherman. And I looked it up, Article 99. And it lists these whole things that as a soldier in the armed forces, you are to go after the enemy. You are to engage the enemy. Avoiding the enemy can get you in serious trouble. And I found a book by an old missionary. He's gone on to be with the Lord. His name was Don Nelson. Went to Alaska. He was a tail gunner in World War II. Shot down over Berlin. A POW for 7 years, I think. I bought the last 200 books. I never met him, but I called the ministry, and I got the last 200 books, and it's called, this is the title, In the Army of the Lord, None Dare Call It Desertion. And he told that story. He said in the military, if you avoid the enemy, we've got a lot of pastors and a lot of believers avoiding the enemy. Let me tell you what's going on right now. There's no more dress rehearsal. This is the real deal. We are entering a new phase in a new area. Look what John Adams said. So this is left out. I never heard anything like this. Abigail Adams, his wife, in the letters they wrote, they had a prophetic nature to them. So full of scripture. John Adams rejoiced. Pulpits have thundered. And ministers were among, quote, characters the most conspicuous, the most ardent and influential in the awakening and a revival of American principles and feeling that led to American independence. So I wrote a book called Army of God Rising, and then I did a re-edit on it, but then I've added to it, and I asked General Boykin to do the forward, only because I said, General, you were a part of it. I said, you preached in our pulpit July 2012. Anybody know and heard General Boykin? He's an American hero. Black Hawk Down, he oversaw that. He was in just almost 37 years in the military, an amazing man, and anointed of God. And it was, the Lord used him in a Sunday service. So I asked him to do for it. But here was basically what the Lord spoke to me in that book. And I ran out, and we're going to get them reprinted. But 3 things he said. Number 1, this was 2015. I am assembling my army right now. This is 2015. I'm assembling my army right now. He said, number 2, the biggest shock you're going to get, you alluded to it, Dave, is who's in this army and who isn't. And you know when the Lord speaks to you, there's a lot that comes with it. I knew we were going to look around. Hey, where's Brother So-and-so? Where's So-and-so? Nowhere to be found. And then we're going to look over and say, who is that over there? I've never heard of them, never seen them. And it's somebody that God's approval's on. The third thing he said, and another big surprise you're going to have is who you're running with. So I want to tell you up front, never say never, okay? Let me tell you a story that was fun. So we decided we were going to, is this the 5th year we're in now, Dave?
Yes.
5th year. So getting ready. David and Tim Barton flew up, carries his little suitcase around with very rare books, okay? So he's in the room, Greg Moore, Gary Lukey, myself, Richard Harris, and Andrew. And we're starting the big X in the sand on curriculum, okay? And we're sitting there and it was time for a break. And all of a sudden, David, we're kind of getting ready, just going to take a break, get coffee and all that. And all of a sudden, David goes, oh, I hated history growing up. I said, whoa, whoa, whoa. I've never heard that, David. I said, you hated history? Oh, he said, I couldn't stand it. He said, I love mathematics. His dad was a bivocational pastor, an engineer with a top secret clearance, I believe. And I said, you hated history? He said, yes, I did. I said, this is hilarious. Here you hated history, and look what God's called you. He's been called America's historian. He has the largest private collection of documents predating 1812. Dave and Marion have been there. I have not. A little envious. Spent Thanksgiving, I think, with them and what have you. Went hunting, maybe. I don't know.
Target shooting.
Target shooting. Well, that's fun, too.
1,000 yards.
David is a true cowboy. So is Tim. So he hated history, and I said, and then I just learned in the last few years, Andrew couldn't stand Bible schools. Did y'all know that? And what has God called him to do? Start a Bible school. And I never, ever, ever, trust me, this wasn't even in my mind that I would be a pastor. Are you kidding me? And then when I started following the Lord, I heard it was actually Bob Yandian years ago saying, now some of you are going to be pastors. You may not think so, but you're going to be pastors. And just don't be too quick to say no. And I thought, yeah, I wonder who the Lord's talking to here. I never thought. So it always blesses me to hear how you got here. You know, and it's not important to know the end. It's important to follow the Lord. How many's heard the name Wilberforce? Okay. So here he was in England, and he went and consulted. So what should I do? Should I go into pulpit ministry? Should I go into politics? What should I do? Thank God the counsel was go into government. I think it was Parliament, I guess. Go. He was used by God to deal with slavery. And what was it, 2 or 3 weeks before he died, he saw his dream fulfilled. I just think, what has God got planned for each of you? I know that I remember Dave being in the first class and sharing what the Lord shared. Who would have ever thought? Because whereas he pointed out what a blessing Chris is to him and Marion, and she carries a lot, well, I couldn't do anything of what I'm doing without Dave doing what he's doing, and he does such a great job. Carries the heart of Andrew, carries the heart of the Lord. He and Marion, I can't think of one without the other. That is the better half back there. Just so y'all know, I didn't need to tell you that, but you know that, right? And I'm just so grateful because, Andrew, we've talked about doing some other things. I love this. I love my part. It's a privilege for me. I get to do this. I tell people I don't work. I do not work. You know the saying that the day you find your passions, last day you'll ever go to work. This is not work for me. I feel this is what I'm born for. This pastor right here, I don't know if Bob's ever had 100 people. He's up in Maine. I flew out to see him. He was really discouraged as a pastor. He went to a FRC event. David Barton had an influence on him, FRC. And they passed a same-sex union bill up in Maine. And he heard the story and got fired up. And then all of a sudden, he said, I'm going to do something. And Dave basically began to rally And so they have what they call a people's veto in the state of Maine. So they pass it, they can get it back on the ballot with enough signatures, and then they can strike it down. And he just got fired up. So he went out and started talking to pastors and started gathering signatures. And I may be off a few thousand, but you have to have like either 52 or 54,000 signatures to get it back on the ballot. Okay. And how many of you know New England is not the most fertile area for conservatism or biblical principles? He goes out, and at 80 some odd thousand signatures, the Secretary of State called him personally, said, Pastor Emmerich, could we stop? I think we've got enough signatures. You know, you have to vet them, and they were at 8. And I think he ended up with over 120,000 signatures. Got it on the ballot, struck it down. But here's what we learned from this next thing. Right after that, the opposition was already ready. And they overturned it again. That was way back, I think, 2010. But here's what I'm saying. You don't have to be a mega church or a mega pastor to affect a change. He got passionate. And many times it's the individuals that just find out, God, what would you have me to do? Chris Shea and then Tim Kohler, who was in our first class, they were President Trump's top door knockers. Right here from Charis, you know. And when we were out at the Trump rally, Charis students everywhere. We are blessed to have Andrew Womack that is not afraid to speak up. Truth and Liberty Coalition Conference was amazing. Isn't it interesting, after we did that Wednesday night with Bishop E.W. Jackson, Janet Boynes, General Boykin, Tony Perkins, Bill Federer, the next day I was sitting in the room, they walked in, cease and desist order. So we're in a spiritual battle. Tyranny is not easily overcome. But look at this. Never thought I'd be quoting a communist, but Karl Marx said, take away the heritage of the people, and they're easily persuaded. That's where we're at. That's why I'm excited you're here. I believe that we're at a place right now. You know, we're in a crisis in this country. Yep. Who would have ever thought we'd see cities on fire? Yep. Calling to defund the police. Yep. Get to the place infanticide. Not only abortion up to the time of delivery, but if you get that little baby out on the table and you decide you don't want it, just like, can you believe this? Yeah. And I have to quote Francis Schaeffer, in front of every abortion clinic, there needs to be a sign, here by permission of the church. All authority, Jesus said, has been given unto me, both in heaven and in earth. Go therefore. So, Andrew, at the Truth and Liberty Conference, 25 million Christians did not vote in the last presidential election. Now, thank God we won. What could we do? In every state, we have an openly gay governor with 2 adopted children. I heard maybe another. With a radical LGBT agenda. How many of you heard House Bill 1032? Do you all know what that is? They call it sex education. It's indoctrination. It is the most radical. Some of it is dangerous techniques that we're not talking adults. Kids that have not had a biology lesson. It can go as young as a kindergartner, but what, 4th grade, are being shown things and taught things. And now, kind of closing up on this, a dear friend, I hope we get Bishop Joshua here from Uganda. Dave and Marion have hosted him in his home. I feel like I've had a little bit of a front row seat to what God's done in Uganda. So I met Bishop Joshua through a mutual friend in Uganda. A lot of you remember Idi Amin, Milton Obote, Joseph Kony, who's not a politician, who's a terrorist. Probably has to go in the list of being one of the 100 most evil men in history. They would capture these children and make them kill their parents. Take the boys as soldiers, the girl as sex slaves. Sometimes they'd make them drink their parents' blood or eat their heart. I mean, it is a level of darkness we cannot fathom. So, I only say that because the depths of Satan, that country went to the depths of Satan. Bishop Joshua told us Uganda's never been dedicated to the Lord. and until the church began to rise up. And so I met Bishop Joshua many years ago through a mutual friend. And all of a sudden I started seeing, wow, God's using this man to lead a movement. And the president, Museveni, First Lady, she's a godly woman. And I met her and met the president. And the president now takes Bishop Joshua as a personal confidant. And I've watched them taking the nation back. We'll maybe get to show it this year. The president renouncing the evil past and dedicating the nation to God. It'll make you weep when you realize the magnitude of what's happening. But it's really not the evil we're facing that we need to be afraid of. It's the lack of light in the body of Christ. All we need to say, and it doesn't even take a majority, because when God told Gideon, he said, Gideon, you're going to take these Midianites on as though you're one man, as though they're one man. And he's like, but there's a problem. There's too many of you. And they were already outnumbered. And you remember the reduction process. And then what they get it down to? 300. And he said, now we're ready. It's like, are you serious? And here's the strategy. You're going to take these clay pots and these trumpets. Have you got another strategy, Lord? So it is important we hear the Lord. And it just blesses me. I know it blesses Dave and Mary, and I can't wait. You're going to be blown away this year. It's going to be like drinking out of a fire hydrant. But it's going to be a good thing. I will say this. David Barton told me this. I'm not saying it. He said there's nothing like what you're in right now. You know, there's Hillsdale. They do some good things. He said there is nothing like, this is David saying this. I'm just quoting him. He said there's nothing like the Practical Government School. You get David and Tim Barton. I'm telling you, cream of the crop, best of the best. Doesn't get any better. Bill Federer, world history, and the lineup of people and things, and this being our 5th year, is that right? I think the Lord's got this fine-tuned. I believe you're here for such a time as this. We just want to thank you for being obedient to the Lord, for listening. I can't wait to get to know you all better. And just remember, when I'm here, make sure your names are out in front so I get those learned, okay? And thanks so much, and let's welcome Dave back.
So this being our 5th year, just remember, if there's any test that you don't know the answer, just say you plead the 5th. So I don't want to dismiss you prematurely because of the other class that's having their hour of registration right now. So I'm going to spend a few minutes with you on the field trips you're going to have this year. How many of you would love to go on a guided tour of the Capitol with David Barton?
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's going to be what you're going to do. And I'm going to plug in and see if this will convert over. I think it should. There we go. So with this year, we will start collecting $200 per month per person, and you are allowed to bring a spouse. And if you don't have one, this might be a good opportunity to start looking for one. And that spouse will pay the same $200, or it's a total of $1,400. So there's 7 months starting in September that goes up through March, and then our trip's in April. So what I like to tell the class is that in April, you're going to have an all-expenses-paid trip. It's just that you paid the expenses. And so it'll include your lodging, your travel, airfare, your tours, your meals, everything included. It is a bargain. But it is something that you're going to have to start saving for. You can pay ahead if you want, but each month, at the end of the month, we'll ask you for a payment of $200. So, the Capitol, of course, you recognize, and I'm going to start you through local government. So this is in the chambers of the Woodland Park City Hall, and this was my class and Chris's class that went through the tour of, and you can see Richard Harris over on the right, who was our coordinator. And then we went to the El Paso Board of County Commissioners, and they'll ask one of you to open in prayer for their session. And they ask for that on a weekly basis year-round. So if you'd like to do that, that's an opportunity you can have. And so there we are with Peggy Littleton, who is in the black and gray, standing next to the black gentleman who was in our class. Peggy was a county commissioner then. She has since term limited, but we will have someone who is a county commissioner teaching you in local government this year. And there, Debbie Chavez came as a guest speaker. She's the head of Colorado Family Action. There we went to the state capitol in Denver, and we took a bus or a Caris van, something like that. And so we got back on the van, and we were halfway back, and everybody said, or someone said, "Where's Charlie?" And we had left one of our students. We're hopeful that will not happen this year. Fortunately, there was another in our class who had stayed behind and was still in an area where she was able to give him a ride back to campus. The Practical Government School has a Patriot Academy, which is put on by Rick Green and those associated with him, Nathan Macias, who come in, and for 2 days our classroom becomes a legislature where you write a bill, you have classmates who are writing bills, you try and pass yours, they make amendments to yours, you know, you become a politician, a legislator for a couple of days. And Zach has been through the Patriot Academy, a summertime version, 4 times? That guy is dedicated. He has had government on his heart for a long time. And so there is Kim Kohler, our classmate, and Chris Shea, who got to meet President Trump because they were the 2 top door knockers in the state of Colorado for the Trump campaign. Here we are on the bus for the Washington, D.C. Trip to the airport. And there, from the airplane, you can see the Lincoln Memorial, the Washington Monument, Jefferson Memorial, and then our class in front of the Capitol. And by the way, I should back up for those of you who don't know. Next to the lady in orange is Richard Anthony, who was 87 when he graduated from the Practical Government School. Never too late. And then you enter for the tour of the Capitol into the lower level, and then come up into the rotunda. You can see Tim Barton there teaching, and his mom and dad just beaming, watching their son teaching in the rotunda of the Capitol. And David standing by a copy of the Declaration of Independence, then taking us into the room next door, which is called Statuary Hall, where each state is allowed 2 statues of people who were significant in the founding of that state. 2/3 of those statues were pastors. Isn't that awesome? And they say that the founders were deists and atheists. I don't think so. And so here, one of our graduates, Stephen Horridge, who was just at church on Sunday because they came back from Rhode Island, where he is leading a church, but he came through the Practical Government School to learn the foundations of our history so he could share that with his congregation. So his son, the reason they came back, his son is starting first year. And so, how awesome. And then Jan Jensen, who was also in our class. And here was a beautiful view of the Capitol at night after we came out after the tour. And we did a nighttime tour of the monuments. There's the Jefferson, Lincoln, and there we are in front of the Washington Monument. And as you can see, we had one member pictured, Jake, who was in a wheelchair. If you're still in a wheelchair, we'll accommodate that. So it's no problem. We've done it before. Jake has plans not to be in a wheelchair. Amen? We're believing God. And there in the Jefferson Memorial and Lincoln Memorial, and beautiful time of year to go in the spring when flowers are in bloom. And there's Richard and Donna. And I kind of interposed these 2 slides. Oops, it skipped. Because, I guess I've somehow missed a slide. I had a picture of a security guard frowning. That kind of looked like he might have been frowning at them. And so, excuse me for the slides jumping. So Library of Congress, I would consider the most ornate building in Washington. So in the interior, can you imagine building a library today and going to the amount of detail and ornate decor? Here's the Supreme Court building. While we were in the Supreme Court building, you don't get to photograph in the chambers, but this was the walkway in. While we were there, the first appointment that Trump made was confirmed while we were in the chambers. That was awesome. And then we went on a tour of George Washington's home at Mount Vernon. It's about 45 minutes outside of D.C. And that is, I mean, it was eye-opening to me. Do you think of a couple hundred years ago as them being primitive and not having power tools and technology? Look at the quality of construction in this home. And then they had outbuildings and a deck with a view. Wow, what a view. And whoops, I guess some of the outbuildings aren't pictured here, but they had a special building for the smoking of the meats because there was no refrigerators. And another building for laundry and another for painting and so forth. It was amazing. Here's Arlington National Cemetery. You can see all the little white dots all over the green grass that indicates the places of our fallen heroes. So that was a very moving place to visit, and we will go there. And we also go to the pastor's briefing that David Barton puts on, and people like Ted Cruz, people that are well-known legislators, as you sit in there for the day, they just, every 15, 20 minutes, they've got another speaker coming in who's a nationally known legislator. And so that's the end of the slideshow, but it's not the end of what you're going to experience. It will be the frosting on the cake when you get to go on that trip. So now, we're 10 minutes until the time slot that we have. So as I say, if you need to go to your vehicle and drop things off, you're welcome to. But use these pathways where you go through the double doors to go out to parking, double doors to come in. And you guys have the closest trip to a classroom of any class, so hallelujah. So let's close with a word of prayer. So Father God, we just thank you for the army of God that you have assembled. And we just thank you that you have a plan and a purpose, and that you will perform your purposes, and your word will not return void. Your plans will be accomplished, and we just dedicate ourselves to be a part of what you are doing. And we thank you for it in Jesus' name. So also, I'd like you to know that this class is not about making the Practical Government School known. This is about saving a nation. Amen. You are going to be in touch with people all throughout the year that you can communicate the truths you are learning, so you don't have to wait for graduation. And in fact, several of you have come up and said, I want to do this, I want to do that. Great, God bless you. So right now, if you are ready to go, you just go through the hallway, take that left turn through 2 sets of double doors, down the long, narrow hallway into the lobby, where you will go through the various steps for your registration. When you finish with that, you're done for the day, and then we will see you on Monday next week. So God bless you all.